Welcome home, Cojourners. I'm glad you're here for another episode. I'm Dr. Thema, licensed psychologist, ordained minister, and sacred artist, here to help facilitate your journey back home to yourself. And I am so excited for our special guest who is here on today, Dené Logan. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thema. I'm so thrilled to be here with you.
I am so glad that you're here, and I want to tell our audience a bit about you. Dené Logan is a relationship coach and therapist, a group facilitator, and an author. You all need to get the book, Sovereign Love. Go get it. You could press pause. Go get the book and come back. An author based in Los Angeles. In addition to working with clients in private practice, she is a mindfulness coach, a yoga teacher, and specializes in supporting others and showing up more authentically in all of their relationships. That authenticity is so liberating when we can be real with ourselves and in our relationship with others. Dené utilizes her background in depth psychology to infuse archetypes, ritual, and metaphysics into the exploration of how each of us can reclaim, somebody say reclaim, the aspects of our authentic selves that we've been culturally conditioned to turn away from in an attempt to maintain attachments. Her first book, Sovereign Love, a guide to healing relationships by reclaiming the masculine and feminine within, is available now. You can follow her on Instagram, Dené.Logan, and also her website, DenéLogan.com. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, to begin us on our journey, I have asked if you would share a reading from your incredible book and let us know what you've decided to share.
Well, I think this will be a little bit in alignment with what we're going to talk about in terms of a homecoming journey for myself.
Yeah.
But this is just a little bit of an excerpt that I love. The fact that people seem to be choosing to enter into committed partnerships much less frequently today suggests that the collective perception of romantic unions has created an image of them being less fulfilling when all is said and done. Some might suggest that this is because our cultural values have become distorted, or that people are much too quick to give up when the going gets tough. And they might be right. But if we ask ourselves what the actual purpose of partnership is in a society that is beginning to question all of its dominance-based structures, like white supremacy, misogyny, gender binaries, and socioeconomic inequity, it stands to reason that some of the historic motives for joining together in union might need to be revisited as well. If a mutual sense of dependency, the fear of immortality, and the honoring of sacred vows are no longer enough to maintain the sanctity of a union between two people, what would a sense of authentic fulfillment look like in modern day partnerships? I think the range of answers to this question could conceivably be as vast as the number of people questioned, but from my perspective, a sense of fulfillment in modern marriages is going to require more than the security of knowing the other person isn't going anywhere. Our modern partnerships are going to require a sense of Shakti, life force, inspiration, expansion, receptivity, and soul. In short, our partnerships have been missing the exploration of the healthy feminine energetic within us. Just as we've done in every other aspect of our culture, we've normalized relationship structures that are severely lacking in healthy feminine energy. Our partnerships value safety but not aliveness, enmeshment without sensual connection, comfort that is often lacking in curiosity.
Yes. Yes. For us to ask the question, where is the aliveness? Where is the soul?
Yes.
Where is the feminine in this?
Yes.
And when that's absent, it doesn't have much life in it. Yeah.
Which does not come without a cost.
No, it can be very costly. And I know, in part the learning is book learning, scholarship learning, and a part of the learning is lived experience.
Yes.
And so how did you discover that those other types of love were insufficient?
Yeah, I was married myself for almost 12 years.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, I'm a marriage and family therapist, but I've been primarily a couples therapist for most of the time that I've been in private practice.
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting moment of, I guess I'll say, reckoning and sort of questioning the structures that I had been working in and sort of believed to be true when I realized that my almost 12-year marriage needed to change form. And I always say changed form pretty intentionally because my child's father is still someone that I believe is one of my life's soulmates, one of the best friends I've ever had. And what we realized was it was no longer in alignment for us to be in union and partnership in the way that we had been.
Yeah.
And so I just started to, as that relationship was shifting, get so curious about, you know, the origin points of these partnerships and the ways that we have been socialized, certainly around relationships, but also about how we hold ourselves according to gender and these gender dynamics. And it sort of became an obsession and a love affair. And, you know, I so much of what I love about you and your work is I think you really challenge us to question these systems and not just like if something is maladaptive or we're not thriving, can we really look at the systems that are surrounding the way that we're attempting to thrive?
Yes.
And I don't feel like we've done that enough with our relationship structures.
Yeah.
So it's really what I attempted to dive into in this book.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so appreciative for your transparency, for your truth telling, for your honesty. I have this phrase, shatter the shame to shatter the silence. Shatter the silence to shatter the shame. And I think that is especially the case if you talk about doing couples work as someone who unpartnered, separated, divorced, had breakup, and to know that that experience can be a point of wisdom, right? And can be a growth point, because many times it's perceived of, you know, the larger society calls it failures.
Yes.
Right? Which is why I think you're intentional about your language of the relationship changed, right? As opposed to like, oh, we failed. It's that it was no longer meant to go into another season.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think I'm a little bit obsessed with this idea of putting down the idea that relationships shifting means that anybody has failed.
Right.
You know, I think we sort of in our society normalize that from birth until about 18 years old, you're going to grow and evolve and shift. And then we almost imagine it stops around like 21. And that has not been what I have found to be the case, certainly within myself, but with all of the people that I've worked with. We are going to continue to evolve and change. And I think there's something in understanding that throughout your life, if you are partnering with other people, I think you will partner with several different people, sometimes in the same relationship, but sometimes in different relationships. But we're going to change whether we stay in one partnership or not. So I really love to normalize that this is just actually a part of our human development that we're not always that honest about.
Yes. And so many people have the experience of relationships that they thought would be lifetime end up being seasonal. And so what was your healing process from that?
Yeah. I think I was really fortunate in, well, let me just say first of all that I was married to just an incredibly beautiful human. He's just such, he made it really easy in a lot of ways for us to continue a friendship. But I will say also that we had a child together, and I think so much of what I have experienced as a therapist when there has been a severing of relationships or divorce is that it was often like a really painful thing for that child to experience, just sort of feeling like they were the object that was being pulled apart by each parent and not really taking into consideration how they were experiencing one another. And so I think we made a decision when we separated that our child and how he experienced us was going to be the North Star of love, was going to be the goal, right? That he came from love and the love continues, and that families can look like a lot of different things. But it made it really easy. When we, you know, well, I won't say always easy, but that was sort of the practice. Like, how do I come back to love? And then I think, you know, there was a lot that I was confronted with when all of a sudden after, you know, certainly being in that relationship for almost 16 years, but then realizing that before that, I'd just kind of gone from relationship to relationship. And so being a woman of a certain age, a woman of color, and there were all of these things that I sort of understood were societal constructs about myself, and I could sort of buy into what society was going to tell me that would mean to be a woman in my 40s and, you know, all of a sudden unpartnered,
Yeah.
or I could decide, and I go back to Audre Lorde's work a lot, and she has this quote that if I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into others' ideals for me and eaten alive. And I really decided like my work is going to be to define myself for myself, and that it's not going to be about what I'm afraid of so much. If I like really channel this into purpose and attempting to understand, I think everything we go through can be the medicine for someone else, maybe their survival guide if we choose to see it that way. And so I just decided to make that my focus, and it felt a lot easier when I focused my energy there.
Beautiful. And then I love your leaning into love, right? Because, sometimes people can give up on it or become hardened, but you're like, love, but to the maximum. Love, in this state, in the sovereign, right? And so sovereignty and love, how do those come together?
I think there's been a blueprint that we've been raised with. A lot of times a very sort of, if we're honest, a colonized idea of like the nuclear family structure, and this is what is, quote, normal. And if you are somehow outside of that framework, then you're abnormal or you're not thriving. And, as someone who's worked with couples for many years, I've just been able to see up close a lot of the distortions and what we've been calling normal and what we've been calling loving. And so often I think what we understand about the person that we're closest to is that we treat this person a lot of times like we wouldn't treat anybody else in the world, right?
Sometimes get the worst of us.
And, there's reasons in terms of attachment that that's the case, but I think it becomes like a mindfulness practice to really challenge ourselves to ask, how do I want to show up for this person intentionally? But also, what do I want to co-create? What do I want to be the truth of what is love in alignment with who I am and who I am becoming and how I want to show up in the world? And I think that, my definition of love has really shifted into the work of like, what is the soul tending aspect of the love for one another, right? If this is another soul and we are walking side by side, or for however long we are meant to journey together, we are in one another's lives, how do I want to hold with a lot of reverence that this is another soul's journey and that matters, right? And certainly my journey matters, but really being mindful of that, that soul work as we're doing the work of attempting to be in relationship with one another.
Beautiful. A soulful love. And what would you say, is the opposite of that? Like, what are the scripts that we usually get that's not soulful love?
I think we're really raised with what I describe as a codependent template, which is sort of this energy of like, I'm okay if you're okay. And a lot of this thing of like believing that someone outside of me is what I need to be whole. And of course, we were always whole. We couldn't not be if we tried. But I think there's a way that we just sort of have a misunderstanding of what authentic connecting is, and even what it is to be in community with one another. And so much of that is that we're raised in these templates that are really rooted in dominance and power over structures versus the energy of power with, which is, if I believe that I'm whole and that it's my responsibility to continue to cultivate that sense of wholeness and do all of the things that bring me a sense of life force and a sense of, remembering who I am when I'm not afraid, then from that space of wholeness, I'm able to pour into certainly my partners, but all of the people in my life from the overflow. But what I realized when I was sitting with couples so often was, because we're really raised in a society that makes us believe in deficit and lack and fear and scarcity, we're sort of in this energetic like extraction process, right? Where we're believing I need to extract something from you to be whole. And so we're just competing for energy, and my needs aren't getting met, and you didn't do this, and we're sort of tit for tat and competitive energy all the time, where that ends up not feeling like love, right? Whereas if I just really am in the space of coming back to myself and being in the inquiry around like, what is the story I'm telling myself in these moments that I feel shortchanged by my partner? Because so often it's not actually about the person that we're relating to. It's about something historic, and this sort of reminds me of when I was little and I didn't feel seen, and so I sort of bring that in sort of a reactive state versus getting still so I can really respond from the space of curiosity with my partner and presence. But It's a practice, and none of us are going to do it perfectly. But I think when we have that awareness that, this is what this is, to try to love from the space of defining what I want love to be for myself, and that's the sovereignty piece for me, then we get to do that practice of mindfulness work in our relationships every day.
Yeah, so beautiful to be curious and to be undistracted, because that's what we're often looking for, is distraction from ourselves, but getting back to that narrative. So for you, before going on this kind of professional, educational journey, what were the scripts and stories that you grew up with that pointed you in the other direction of love?
Yeah, I talk about in the book, and something that didn't really become clear to me until after my marriage changed form, was that there was so much about the way that I was raised that was really to not trust in men and to protect myself at all costs. I was raised in a really, strong matriarchal energy. It was sort of like the men are here, but they're not to be seen, like fall in line was sort of the energy, right? And that I was raised that I had to be strong and I had to be able to take care of myself, but it meant something bad if I wasn't in a partnership. So I needed to be married, but don't depend on him. But don't depend on him, and at any moment he could let you down, and that you weren't really meant to respect him in a lot of ways, right? And I say that with a lot of understanding that a lot of this is multi-generational pain points that were sort of passed down, and there's a whole host of reasons why that was, but I think my ex-husband and I sort of had this thing of holding up the model minority that I think there were so many ways that I can see now. We were sort of that good enough Black family that had the perfect wedding, and all of these things that were the societal expectations that they weren't even necessarily explicit messages. That they were just sort of implied. This is really important, that this looks a certain way, but behind closed doors, it didn't always feel that way, right? I think there were so many ways that I realized, my husband and I at the time really represented so many things for my family and our marriage that was sort of like the perfect wedding, and it was really ideal and beautiful. I start off the book talking about even what the behind the scenes of that wedding was, and the dynamics were, that it looked really pretty from the outside, but that wasn't necessarily the truth. But there was so much about how I was raised in general that was really you need to be exceptional. You need to really be the thing that allows people to forget all of the stereotypes that they've held about Black people that you want to prove are not true. And so I think I spent a lot of my life performing and not really caring about or thinking about how things actually felt on the inside. And I was so angry, Dr. Thema. I was just I would come home, and I was a yoga teacher, and people used to always say, Dené, your husband must just love coming into that soothing voice. And I'd be like, oh yeah, totally.
What soothing voice?
Right? Where I was just an angry, I was the angry Black woman, right? I was so angry all the time. And what I realized was there was so much of myself that I had suppressed to be what society expected me to be. And when my marriage ended, I remember I had this moment of who was I before people told me who I was supposed to be enough? And I went back for that little girl, right? And I just started to sing and dance in my bedroom alone and cry and really allow myself to grieve all of the years that I'd been in this performance space of this is what you need to be in order to be an acceptable member of society, but really leaving Dené behind in a lot of ways. And I gotta tell you, since I have come to this recognition for myself, I can't tell you the number of women, certainly, that have told me, you're describing exactly what I have felt, but I'm starting to understand that's so true for men as well, right? And I think we're living through a time where we're having a reckoning with all of the ways that we've sort of been performing and not really in alignment with what is true and what is just an integrated sense of health and wellness and in right relationship with the earth and our feminine essence, right? And so we're sort of, I think, confronted with a lot of that right now, hopefully in a way that we are going to rise into our understanding of why we need to put all that down and just start being ourselves.
Yeah. What a testimony. So powerful and honest, of the public-facing, peaceful yoga teacher,
Girl.
and the warrior who the family got to see, who your spouse got to see. And so, what has it been like to soften?
That part. I smile even as you say it, because I think it makes me a little emotional when I think about what it has been like, even to soften into the sense of self that like I get to be now, I get to play, and I get to not be in this armored space of just like I gotta be at war and like defending myself at all costs, but I just get to trust in life. I think the way that I have come into a deeper understanding of who I am spiritually has allowed for that softening, trusting that I'm always held, that there's nothing that I need to force or figure out, that life figures it out. Right? It's just a completely different way of being in the world, and it's such a gift. My life every day feels like a gift. It's so funny. As I was driving here to come meet you, I was like, there are these moments where it's like, if you just surrender into following the breadcrumbs of your bliss, life will bring you everything that you long for. And there was a time when I longed to meet you, truly, and here I am.
Here we are.
Like, it's just like allowing for life to sort of carry you down the stream to where you're meant to go.
Yeah, and I feel like the timing is a gift, right?
Absolutely.
That, because there are earlier moments where you're like, why not now? And it's like, but we needed sovereign love and to be born, like, for this moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's such an important aspect, because there's a lot of times we feel like we're ready for whatever the blessing is, and we wouldn't even know how to hold it.
So beautiful, that gift of shedding and unbecoming, and also the freedom to not have the weight of proving what a Black woman could be. Right?
Yes.
But just being. And that in the freedom of that is that, like, this is what a Black woman could be.
That's
right?
it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that there's so many aspects of the strength that I carry ancestrally that I feel in my bones. And with that, there's so much about allowing myself to be soft and enjoy this life that feels like a reclamation on behalf of those who weren't able to live a soft life that came before me.
Yes, yeah. And so in what ways does the old script still pull at you or show up? How is it a work in progress?
Yeah, I think I know that I'm in the space of rejecting my feminine when I have really big, unruly emotions for no reason, and I'm judging myself. Right? Like if I'm just having a hard day or, in the space of overwhelm and I'm sort of pull it together. That's sort of like that wounded masculine, like, come on, Dené. And I have to remind myself, like, I get to be human. I get to be doing whatever I need to do to take care of myself well. And sometimes that means having a good cry. Sometimes that means just go to bed today. You'll feel better when you wake up tomorrow. But I think the more that I build that as a muscle, that thing of allowing myself not only to be in that softness, but that imperfection. I think my messiness is the thing that I really struggled with for a lot of years. And that's something I've just come into the space of like, I'm a mess. That's where I am right now. And a lot of times I find it so permission giving to others, right? That I'll be the mom at drop off with like weird socks and like looking a mess and everybody's all, and I'm like, we can do this, ladies. We can, come to school looking how we look and still be worthy. And that's okay. Right? I think it's a practice.
Still be worthy, right? That message, both the internal and external eyes, right? And getting free in that. And have you had thoughts about being open to romantic love?
It's so funny, Dr. Thema. I think that we are living in the midst of an evolutionary period when it comes to romantic love. And I think that there's so much about the emphasis on the pair bond that is shifting, where I believe we're just shifting back into more of an emphasis on community, and that we're going to have a ton of people who are surrounding us, and that we're we're thriving with and getting our needs met. And I don't believe that we were ever meant to just do this in this nuclear family box. I think anyone who's ever attempted to raise a child with just two people, I sit with couples all the time. I'm like, this feels impossible because it is. You know, you were supposed to be able to
community,
hand that kid over to auntie and like keep going and go heal and do all of these things that we're just sort of not living as I believe we were meant to live. That being said, I think I'm always open to everything, but it's a little bit of what you were saying before about the divine timing. I find that there is nothing that comes into my life where it's not in the precise moment it's meant to. So I trust, and I'm like, you know, I know that I will collide with all of the souls that I'm meant to collide with when it's time. And in the meantime, I just feel like I'm really loving the community that I get to be surrounded by.
I love that. Community love, self-love, sacred love, and that soulfulness. Yeah. So for those who are not in a formulaic way, because they need to read the book, you all need to read the whole book. But if you could give a jewel for people starting that process of wanting to release those other scripts and embrace sovereign love, what would be a step in that direction?
Yeah, thank you. I think a little bit that work I did of going back for that little girl or little boy and just remembering what you loved before you had to prioritize all of the things that the world told you were priorities. And so whatever is bliss for you, and if you don't know, beautiful, like you get to be in the exploration process. And so often that can be just getting out in nature and allowing yourself to tap into the innate wisdom that starts to come online when we breathe fresh air and just allow ourselves to be outside. Because children, they'll be outside just like discovering the magic everywhere. They're like, oh, it's pretty, it's amazing, right? But we forget to do that as adults. And I think that that's where we start to come back into that imaginal space of really remembering, like, who do I want to be? What do I want to create with this one wild, precious life I've been given?
Yes, with this precious life, seeking our bliss. And I love that permission that if you don't know what it is, we can go find it, explore, and discover what speaks to your heart. So thank you so much for being with us on today. This has been a homecoming. So I invite your soul to tell your heart, mind, body, and spirit, welcome home.